She wasn't looking for anything that night. No suspicions. No reason to check. She wasn't the kind of woman who snooped. But sometimes betrayal doesn't wait for your permission. Sometimes it walks straight into your living room and taps you on the shoulder. Her name was Nina, and for the past 7 years, she'd been blissfully married to David. They had the kind of marriage people envied. Late-night ice cream runs, quiet, warm mornings, a daughter who smiled like her father and danced like her mother. David was perfect, maybe too perfect. She was folding laundry in the living room when his iPad lit up on the coffee table. He'd left for a last-minute meeting, something about a client emergency. The screen glowed in the dark, and for the first time that day, the house was silent. Then it vibrated again. A message. She wasn't trying to read it. She didn't even mean to look. But the screen lit up, bright and bold, and the preview said, "He misses you. I miss you too. We're waiting." Her hands froze above a pile of warm towels. She blinked once, twice. Her brain scrambled for a rational explanation. Spam? Wrong number? Maybe it wasn't even what it looked like. But then came the second message. Photo attachment. Look at his little face. Just like his daddy. Nina didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just reached for the iPad, her heart knocking like a fist against her ribs. The iPad was unlocked. David never used passwords. He said they were annoying. She opened the messaging app, and there it was. A conversation. Ongoing, intimate, frequent. The name at the top read, Sabrina. The thread went back months. He called her baby. She sent him videos of a boy, maybe 3, maybe 4, laughing, running, calling someone daddy. The most recent photo shattered her. It was David, crouched in a backyard she didn't recognize, holding the boy, smiling. She zoomed in. His face wasn't blurred. His hands weren't unsure. No, this wasn't a slip-up. This was comfort, familiarity, intention. The boy had his eyes. Nina sat still for 10 whole minutes. The kind of stillness that only comes after something breaks. It wasn't a dream. She pinched herself twice. She blinked too many times. The messages were still there, and they went deeper than infidelity. This wasn't about lust. This wasn't about sex. This was a second life, a second family. Her mouth tasted like metal. She stood up, but her knees gave out. She gripped the coffee table. Breathe, Nina. Just breathe. She wasn't a screamer. She wasn't impulsive, but she wasn't stupid either. And she wasn't going to ask him, not yet. She had a daughter upstairs, a dinner still half eaten, a man who'd kissed her goodbye less than an hour ago. So she did the unthinkable. She wiped the screen, placed the iPad back gently, and folded the last of the laundry with trembling hands. She didn't sleep that night. She lay beside him after he came back, faking slow, peaceful breathing. He smelled like hotel shampoo and lies. She watched him in the dark, eyes wide open, mind spinning. The photo replayed in her skull. The message echoed in her bones. He misses you. I miss you too. She turned to face the wall and whispered in her mind, "Who the hell are you, David?" The next day, Nina became someone else. Not on the outside. She still kissed their daughter on the forehead, packed lunch, and waved goodbye. But inside, a storm was forming, a deep, methodical one. She began investigating. She started simple: receipts in his pockets, calls he didn't answer, odd patterns in his late-night meetings. Every Wednesday, he said he worked late. But now she knew that was Sabrina's night. She made no accusations, no drama, just quiet, meticulous note-taking. She downloaded the images from the iPad, forwarded the messages to her email, and saved everything to a hidden folder named Project. On the third day, she called his assistant pretending to be someone else, asked where David was scheduled to be that evening. The answer? A client dinner downtown. At 8 p.m., she followed him. Her heart pounded so loud in her ears, she could barely hear her car's engine. She drove 2 neighborhoods over and parked across the street from a modest, cream-colored house. The porch light was on, and there he was, getting out of his car, carrying a gift bag, smiling like a man coming home to another home. Nina watched as a woman opened the door. Slim, curly, hair, pretty, radiant. She threw her arms around David's neck, kissed him. Then came the child running, arms outstretched. David bent down, scooped him up effortlessly, and kissed his cheek. The front door closed behind them, and Nina, she sat alone in the dark, in her car, with her heart in pieces and her eyes wide open. She didn't cry, not yet, because tears require understanding, and nothing about what she just saw made any sense. Was he married to that woman too? How long had this been going on? Who knew? Was she the side piece, or was that woman? Nina had a decision to make, and she made it without hesitation. She would not confront him. She would not scream. She would become a ghost in her own life, watching, listening, collecting. She would make him pay in a language he understood, slowly, and when she was done, there would be nothing left of him to rebuild. Back home, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She began digging. Sabrina's name, social media profiles, work listings, local real estate records. By 1:43 a.m., she had an address, a phone number, a birthday, and a school listing for the boy. He was 4. His name was Lucas. His last name, Reynolds, David's last name. So it wasn't a fling. It wasn't a mistake. David had signed a birth certificate, paid bills, took family photos. He was living 2 full lives, and Nina? She wasn't the first to know, but she would be the last person he ever forgot. By morning, she'd made another decision. She applied for a second phone under a fake name, created a fake Facebook account, and with a calmness that chilled her to the bone, she messaged Sabrina. "Hi, I think we have something in common. Want to talk?" Sabrina replied the next morning. "I don't usually talk to strangers, but I'm listening. Who are you?" Nina stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered above the keyboard. Her heart? Calm, colder than it had ever been. She typed slowly, "Just someone whose life might be tangled in yours. Can we meet?" There was a pause, then a reply, "That depends. Tangled how?" Nina stared out the window. Her reflection looked like a stranger, and maybe she was to everyone, including herself. She replied, "Let's just say, we may be loving the same man." The message was read. No reply, not for 10 minutes, then 15, then 30. Nina didn't panic. She had all the time in the world. She was already rebuilding herself into someone new, someone with teeth, with silence sharper than knives. Finally, Sabrina replied, "Tomorrow, noon, La Luna Caf. Don't be late." Nina didn't sleep that night either, not because she was anxious, but because something strange was happening. She felt powerful, like a woman rising from her own funeral. At 11:55 the next day, Nina walked into the caf. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just black. She wanted to be invisible until she didn't. Sabrina was already there, sitting by the window, stirring coffee like it had insulted her. She looked up, their eyes locked. Nina walked over. No hesitation, no smile. She sat down, folded her hands, and said, "He told me his name was David Reynolds. He's my husband. Who is he to you?" Sabrina didn't flinch. She blinked once, then set her spoon down gently. "My fiancé," she said, "father of my son, Lucas." The room spun not from surprise, but from the weight of confirmation. Nina nodded slowly. There it was, truth sharp and bitter. "How long?" she asked. 5 years, Sabrina said. "We met at an art gala. He said he was divorced. Said his ex-wife was bitter and toxic. Said she took his daughter away from him." She leaned in. "I take it that ex-wife is you." Nina didn't blink, didn't breathe. Her fingers curled around her cup, but her voice came steady. "We were never divorced, never separated, not even once." Sabrina's lips parted, but no sound came. And in that moment, that microscopic pause, Nina saw the truth. Sabrina had no idea. She wasn't the villain. She was a victim too. Just not the kind Nina planned to warn. No, that plan had changed. They sat in silence for a full minute. Then Sabrina whispered, as if afraid the truth could hear her. "So, he's been living 2 lives?" Nina nodded once. "And he thought neither of us would find out." That night, Nina didn't. Go home. She told David she was visiting her sister, a lie he didn't question. Instead, she went back to her hotel, opened a notebook, and wrote 3 words at the top of a blank page. Phase 1. Control. Underneath, she listed Sabrina's schedule, Lucas' school, David's travel patterns, every lie she'd been told. She circled a name, drew a line, created a web. This wasn't revenge. This was reconstruction of the broken life she never agreed to live. The next week, she messaged Sabrina again, this time with an idea. I want to know everything he's ever said to you, word for word. I'll share mine too. Let's map the lies. Sabrina replied, I already started writing them down. They called it the lie map, a spreadsheet with 2 columns. Lies to Nina, lies to Sabrina. It was horrifying and beautiful, because every line of deception made the truth clearer. David told Nina he had food poisoning on his business trip to Chicago. He was in Cancun with Sabrina and Lucas. He told Sabrina his ex trashed his car in a jealous rage. The truth? Nina's car was hit by a drunk teenager. He'd been rewriting reality for years, constructing false timelines, playing husband and fiancé like roles in a movie. He didn't make mistakes. He made plans. By the 3rd week, Nina had memorized his routine, Monday and Tuesday, with her, Wednesday night to Friday, Sabrina, weekends, alternating excuses, golf, business, emergency clients. And every time he kissed her on the forehead and said, "You're my everything," he was probably washing another woman's perfume off his shirt. But what he didn't know was that both his everything had met, and they were co-writing his downfall. One afternoon, Sabrina sent Nina a voice note. She sounded different, angrier. I can't believe he used my son in this. He let him call him daddy while knowing he already had a daughter. Nina, we need to end this, not just leave him. We need to destroy him. Nina didn't reply for a full hour. Then she sent just one message. I already know how. That night, she cooked David's favorite dinner. Lamb stew, rosemary bread, red wine. He walked in, kissed her cheek, laughed like a man without a care in the world. She smiled back, almost forgot how easy lying could be. He talked about work. She listened, but beneath the table, her phone buzzed. A message from Sabrina. He just texted, thinking of you, miss your lips. While sitting at your dinner table, Nina looked up at David and smiled wider. That night, they lay in bed. She curled into him, let his arms wrap around her, let him kiss her forehead and call her his forever. And she whispered, I missed you. And she meant it. She missed the version of him she thought she married, but that man never existed. And tomorrow, she would start peeling back everything he built, brick by brick. Nina didn't want to watch them again, but she did, twice. The first time, she parked across the street in silence, staring through her windshield at the cream-colored house. It looked harmless, like something from a real estate ad. Trimmed lawn, toy car on the porch, wind chimes dancing lazily. Then the door opened, and out came her husband, or whatever he was now. David stepped onto the porch holding the hand of a woman Nina had already memorized. Sabrina wore a white sundress and a smile Nina hadn't seen in months. She looked happy, radiant, in love. Lucas followed, bounding, laughing, clinging to David's leg. They looked like family, a complete one. And Nina? She watched them like a ghost haunting her own life. The second time, she followed them to a local park, sat on a bench with sunglasses and a scarf, sipping coffee she couldn't taste. She watched David push Lucas on a swing, then lean in and kiss Sabrina softly. He looked relaxed, content, like none of this was double life. Like this second life was the real one. Nina didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Instead, she started walking the edges of his world, quietly, calculatingly. On Thursday, she walked into the same grocery store Sabrina used, pretending to browse. When Sabrina reached for a carton of eggs, Nina reached for the one beside it. Their hands brushed. Sabrina looked up, smiled faintly. Nina smiled back. Neither said a word. And just like that, the overlap had begun. She didn't tell Sabrina she was following them. It was too soon. Instead, she made herself invisible in David's second life. She learned the layout of Sabrina's street. She mapped out exit routes, security cameras, blind spots. She wasn't stalking. She was preparing, because when the time came, she wouldn't just confront him. She would dismantle him. But first, she had to become a shadow in the life he built without her. A ghost behind the curtain. One morning, she watched Sabrina walk Lucas into preschool. Then Nina waited until she left and walked in after her. She introduced herself to the receptionist as Mrs. Cole, an aunt interested in transferring her nephew. Lucas' name came up. The receptionist smiled, told her how sweet he was, told her how lucky he was to have a father like David. Nina's jaw clenched, but she smiled, took the brochure, left. Information was power, and she was gathering enough to bury a man. That night, David kissed her with the same mouth he used to lie. He held her, told her she was beautiful. She stared at him, wondering how many faces he wore, how many hearts he was playing like instruments. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a performance, and she was writing his final scene. The lie that changed everything. The next morning, she called Sabrina. Her voice was calm, like rain on glass. "I have a favor," Nina said. "Anything." Sabrina replied, "I want to meet him." As someone else. There was silence on the other end. Then a breath. "What do you mean?" I want you to introduce me to David," Nina said, "but not as your friend. As someone new. Someone he's never met." Sabrina hesitated. "That's dangerous." Nina's voice didn't waver. "So is lying to 2 women for 5 years." Another pause. Then, when? Soon. 2 nights later, David left for a quick business trip to Boston. Nina knew he wasn't going to Boston. He packed light. No suit, no laptop. Just cologne and lies. When the front door closed, Nina waited 15 minutes, then walked to the mirror and stared at herself. Not the woman she was, but the woman she needed to be. She pulled her hair into a sleek bun, wore red lipstick, a sharp blazer, no wedding ring. Then she got in her car and drove to the Lion's Den. Sabrina met her at the cafe near David's second house. The plan was simple. She would bring Nina in as a potential investor in David's startup pitch. Someone interested in his work, curious, impressed, harmless. David, of course, would never turn down attention from a beautiful stranger, especially not one who fed his ego. He walked in 5 minutes late, confident, smirking. Nina sat at the corner table with Sabrina, who stood and introduced them. "David, this is Zara. Zara, this is David." He shook her hand. His eyes lingered a second too long. And just like that, David Reynolds met his wife. As a stranger, he had no idea. He sat, flashed his charm, spoke about business, branding, legacy. Nina listened, nodding, asking questions with a practiced smile. Her voice soft, her tone respectful, and beneath the table, her hands clenched, because this man, this actor, was so convincing, so smooth, so effortless in his performance, that she almost forgot what he'd done. Almost. But then he said something that sealed his fate. "Honesty is everything," he said, sipping his coffee. "I built my entire company on trust." Nina tilted her head. "That's admirable, especially in a world full of liars." He laughed. "Exactly." And she smiled, dead, cold, silent. After the meeting, Sabrina texted, "You were flawless." Nina replied, "He's going to choke on his lies. I just fed him his last meal." That night, David came home smelling like fresh coffee and smug satisfaction. "Long day," he said, stretching. She nodded, placing his dinner on the table. "I bet." He didn't notice the new perfume on her neck, the same one Zara wore. Didn't notice the faint smear of red lipstick on the inside of her wrist. He didn't notice a damn thing. And that was the problem. He was too confident, too sure of his lies. And now, Nina was going to show him just how dangerous confidence could be. 1 week later, she sent him a message as Zara. Just a simple note. "Loved our talk. Would love to hear more. Coffee again sometime?" He replied within 2 minutes. "Absolutely. Tell me when." And that was it. The confirmation she needed. The proof. He wasn't just lying to 2 women. He was open to a third. which meant it wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. It was power, control, game. And now the rules were about to change. Nina didn't cry herself to sleep. She laid in bed beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. And she whispered under her breath, "You're going to beg me to stop, and I won't." The wind outside howled as if trying to mimic the storm now twisting inside her. Camille sat in her car parked across the street from the house she never knew existed until 48 hours ago. A cozy two-story home with blue shutters, a swing in the front yard, and a name etched into the mailbox that made her throat tighten. The Whitakers. Whitaker, his last name. She blinked back the sting in her eyes and refocused. Her hands trembled, gripping 2535, the steering wheel, but her jaw was set. Inside that house lived the man she married 12 years ago, and the woman who had stolen 12 more. She watched the front door swing open casually. Out stepped Michael in sweatpants and a navy hoodie. He looked relaxed, domestic, comfortable in a way he hadn't looked with her in months. He carried a grocery bag in one arm, a little girl in the other, maybe 4 years old, with curls just like Camille's daughter, Ava. The little girl giggled, clinging to his neck. Camille's lungs froze. There it was, proof. She couldn't cry, not now. She reached over to the passenger seat, pulled out her phone, and pressed record. She zoomed in, click, a snapshot, another, and another. His betrayal was no longer whispers and suspicion. It was pixels and files, facts. Camille watched him disappear into the house. Her chest ached like someone was twisting her heart with slow, cruel fingers. She forced herself to drive away, but she wasn't retreating. She was reloading. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove straight to the old cabin by her aunt's lake, a place no one, not even Michael, knew about. She needed time, space, silence, but most of all, she needed to plan. She played the footage again and again, memorizing every angle, every facial expression. Every second made her angrier. The woman who answered the door had kissed Michael, not on the cheek, on the lips. So it was love, or at least, he'd made her believe it was. Camille could feel herself slipping into something darker than rage. Not vengeful, not hysterical, calculated. She pulled out her journal, not to cry, not to write poetry, to document. May 9th, confirmed secret address. May 10th, saw Michael kiss woman. Girl looks like him. Probable daughter. May 10th, no divorce or separation on public records. Ongoing fraud? She flipped the page and titled it in large black letters. She had the first exposure, but to expose him, she had to bait him. She had to act normal. When she returned home that night, Michael was already on the couch, TV remote in hand, pretending to be the man she used to know. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, babe, you okay? You were gone all day." She leaned down, kissed his forehead, and smiled. "Just needed a little time to think," she said. He nodded slowly. "Everything all right?" She nodded back. "It will be." Inside, her mind was racing. The game had begun. Camille knew she couldn't keep it to herself forever, not for this next phase. So she called the one person who would understand her sister, Nadine. Nadine didn't speak when Camille sent the photos. She only texted one word when Camille replied, "Soon." Together, they began building the web. She created a new anonymous account and started uploading evidence, one piece at a time, not online, but into a private digital vault. Voice recordings of Michael's lies, surveillance shots of his visits to work, receipts for double purchases. Every layer added weight to the file she named Operation Hollow Vows. But it wasn't just about exposing Michael. Camille wanted answers. How long had this been going on? How had he lied so perfectly? How many nights had he come home from them and kissed her like nothing was wrong? She needed the truth, not from Michael, from her. So she did what Michael never imagined she would do. She knocked on the other woman's door. It was a Saturday morning. Camille wore no makeup, no perfume, just plain jeans and a white hoodie. She didn't come as a woman scorned. She came as a woman on a mission. The woman who opened the door looked surprised, then suspicious. "Can I help you?" she asked. Camille gave a tight smile. "You don't know me, but I think we need to talk about Michael." The woman blinked. "Michael Whitaker?" Camille's throat burned, but she didn't flinch. "My husband." There was a pause, a silence so thick it nearly strangled them both. Then the woman laughed, not a full laugh. A breathy, broken thing. "You're lying." Camille pulled out her phone and showed her a wedding photo. "Michael, Camille, Ava." The woman's face drained of color. Her hand trembled against the doorframe. You're his wife?" Camille nodded. "And you?" The woman stepped back slowly. "I'm his fiancée." The words hit like a brick wall. "I have a child with him," she added, voice cracking. "We've been together 8 years." Camille's mouth went dry. 8. That meant overlap, years of lies, a parallel life. The woman stepped aside. "Come in, please." Camille hesitated, then stepped into the house. Photos lined the hallway. Michael and the woman, Michael and the little girl. Vacations, birthdays, holidays. It was surreal. Camille sat on a beige couch as the woman, her name was Marissa, brought her tea with trembling hands. "I don't understand," Marissa said. "He said he was divorced, that Ava was just someone he supported. He promised me." Camille didn't need to hear promises. She needed the timeline. She needed receipts. They began comparing dates, memories, text messages. What emerged wasn't just infidelity. It was a web of deception so thick, it felt almost inhuman. Marissa broke down. "I didn't know. I swear." Camille believed her, not because she wanted to, but because she recognized the same devastation in Marissa's eyes. Michael had fooled them both, and now they were going to return the favor. Together. Camille's voice was quiet. "He doesn't know we've met." Marissa wiped her tears and nodded. "Let's keep it that way, for now." And just like that, a dangerous alliance was born. Michael thought he was living 2 lives, but he was about to face 2 women with one purpose. She stood by the window, fingers trembling against the curtain's edge, eyes glued to the street below. The man she'd once loved, the man who used to whisper forever in her ear, was walking out of her house and heading straight to theirs. Her heart didn't just break, it rotted. Nina had followed him before, once, twice, but this time she was armed with more than suspicion. She had names, she had locations, she had a plan. She hadn't spoken a word in 3 days, not to him, not to the housekeeper, not even to her sister, who kept calling since she felt something was off. Nina was saving her voice for war. She watched as Marcus entered the silver SUV. She already knew the destination, 12 Sycamore Lane, a suburban street with trimmed lawns, swing sets, and the perfect little illusion. His other life, his lie. She grabbed her coat. There would be no confrontation, yet not in public. Not where he could paint her crazy. No, this needed to unravel slowly, like a noose tightening around his throat. It was raining when she arrived. Nina parked 2 houses down and stepped out, umbrella in hand. She walked slowly, deliberately, her heels clicking against wet concrete. The house was cream-painted, with little blue shutters and tulips blooming beneath the windows, a picture of domestic bliss. She stood outside, watching from behind a hedge. Inside, Marcus kissed a woman on the forehead. Then, a child ran toward him. His daughter, his other daughter. She looked exactly like Nina's own child, like a stolen mirror. Her breath caught. She pulled out her phone and took photos every second, every angle. The betrayal needed to be documented. For her, for the war ahead, for the reckoning he didn't see coming. Back home, she printed the photos, lined them on the dining table like evidence in a crime scene. Because that's what it was, a crime, not just of love, but of identity, trust, motherhood. He came home late, smelled of cologne that wasn't hers. His shirt was untucked. His smile is fake. "Long day," he mumbled. She looked up from the table of damning photos. You could say that. His eyes fell on the images. His body went rigid. His throat bobbed. His lies had run out of air. "You followed me?" he whispered. "I followed the truth," she replied. Silence, then rage. He slammed a fist on the table. "This is insane, Nina. You don't understand." "No, you don't," she cut in. Her voice was calm, cold, measured like a sniper's breath. You build a second life, a family, a little world where I didn't exist. But here's the thing, Marcus, I do exist. And now, so does your secret. The next morning, he was gone. Not missing, not vanished, just gone. Clothes, toiletries, his laptop, everything wiped clean, like he'd never lived there at all. But Nina was always a few steps ahead. She walked into the lawyer's office with a folder thick with evidence, photos, bank statements, phone logs. I want everything, she said. The lawyer blinked. You mean? I want the house, the cars, full custody and public exposure. I want her to know. I want the world to know. And I want him to feel what it's like to lose the very air he breathes. 2 weeks passed. She received a call from the woman, the other woman. I didn't know, she sobbed. He told me you were dead. Nina said nothing. The woman continued. He said he was a widower, that he had a daughter once, but she drowned. That's why he never lets our child near pools. Her stomach twisted. He'd turned her pain into a lie, her living daughter into a ghost. Nina didn't hang up. She didn't curse. She just listened. And when the woman finished, Nina whispered, he lied to both of us. But only one of us is going to destroy him. The media storm came next. A viral post. A photo of the two children side by side. A caption that read, when your husband forgets which family he's coming home to. It caught fire. Commenters tore him apart. His company launched an investigation. His family, friends, colleagues, everyone found out. Shame rippled through his world like a hurricane. And Nina, she remained silent. Silence is the sharpest blade. One night, a knock echoed through her home. It was him, soaked in rain, eyes hollow, hands trembling. I lost everything, he said. She stared at him. No, you gave it all away. He dropped to his knees. I made a mistake. She tilted her head. You made a choice. He wept, loud, ugly, desperate. She watched without blinking. You had a family. You chose to build another. So I chose to burn them both to the ground. And she shut the door, not out of hate, not out of pride, but because some betrayals aren't forgiven, they're turned into fire and used to forge something new, something unstoppable. He didn't hear the front door open. He didn't hear her slip off her heels. But when he turned around, there she was, drenched in silence, clutching something behind her back. You weren't supposed to be home, Mark muttered, voice barely above a whisper. Sophia stepped forward, slow and sure, her expression unreadable. And yet, here I am. The tension between them was thick, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your throat. Mark's eyes dropped to her hands. A phone, his old phone, the one he told her he'd lost. She tossed it onto the table, screen up. The messages were open, dozens of them. To her, to the woman with the baby. Sweet nothing, apologies, instructions. Mark blinked, but no words came. Sophia's voice was a whisper soaked in steel. I know everything, Mark. Every disgusting, cowardly secret. He stepped forward. You're making it worse than it is. She laughed, but it was hollow. Worse, Mark, you had another family, a child, and you fed me bedtime stories while they got the truth. She dropped a folded paper on the table. That's from your lawyer. I've been busy. He didn't touch it. Couldn't, Sophia, please? I made a mistake, but I love you. No, she said, finally pulling the item from behind her back. It wasn't a knife. It was a USB drive. You don't get to rewrite history, she whispered. Not when I've got the truth in full HD. Mark's knees buckled. He knew what was on that drive: videos, voice notes, conversations, proof, things he never meant for her to see, things that couldn't be erased. I was going to handle it quietly, she continued. I was going to walk away, let you keep your dirty little secrets. But then I found her journal. Mark's eyes widened. Yes, Sophia said. Your other wife kept a record. Every time you came, every lie you told her about me, about us. She stepped back. You broke us, Mark. You broke me. But I'm done being your victim. He stumbled toward her. Sophia, please, you don't have to do this. She looked at him one last time. I already did. And with that, she turned and walked out of the house. He ran after her, but the driveway was empty. Her car was gone. Only then did he see the envelope taped to the door. It was addressed to the press. Inside, everything, every secret, every photo, every detail. She hadn't just left him, she'd exposed him. Mark didn't sleep that night. Not a blink. His phone was dead, but not from lack of charge. It had been flooded with calls, texts, notifications, journalists, church members, clients, friends, enemies, and worst of all, family. Everywhere he turned, the walls were bleeding with whispers of betrayal. The digital air was poisoned with headlines. Man living double life. Wife uncovers secret family. He sat in the living room, robe hanging off one shoulder. The house eerily silent, hollow. Even the shadows seemed to recoil from him now. The doorbell rang. He flinched. Another reporter? He staggered to the door, half ready to curse whoever it was. But it wasn't a stranger. It was her, Sophia, not alone. Behind her stood a man in a sharp suit and a woman with a camera. "What are you doing?" Mark asked, voice cracking. Sophia handed him a single envelope. "Final footage. I thought you'd want to see what the world will know tomorrow." His hand trembled as he took it. She didn't flinch. Sophia turned to leave. No goodbye, no hesitation. Just grace, the kind that comes when you've burned every bridge and built wings from the ash. He slammed the door, then opened the envelope. Inside was a flash drive. He plugged it in. The screen came to life. It started with her, looking directly into the camera. "To every woman who's ever been lied to every man who thinks secrets stay buried. This is my story." Then, scene by scene, it played. Wedding photos, voice messages, receipts, GPS trackers, DNA tests. The evidence was irrefutable. And then came the journal, her handwriting. Pages read aloud. "Today he kissed me and said he'd told his wife. I believed him. I always did. He said she was broken, that she couldn't give him a child. But I met her once, by accident. She smiled at me. She didn't know who I was." Mark dropped the remote. The footage kept rolling. Sophia's voice returned. "I wanted revenge, but what I needed was freedom. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a warning. Love without truth is a ticking bomb. And lies, they don't stay secrets. They rot everything they touch." The video ended with her walking away from the camera, wind catching her coat like a cape. Then black. A single message blinked on the screen. "To the one still living a lie, you're running out of time." 2 weeks later, Mark was served divorce papers, lawsuits, and formal charges. But the worst punishment? He became invisible. People no longer whispered. They just looked through him, as if he were already gone. Sophia didn't vanish. She started a podcast. A book deal followed. Then speaking gigs. The world called her brave, fierce, iconic. But she only ever called herself free. She never spoke Mark's name again. Not because she'd forgotten, but because some stories are so powerful. They don't need a villain's name to burn.
Love that? This is just the beginning of the madness, heartbreak, obsession, and revenge we bring to your screen every week. Subscribe now to Love and Blood, where love bleeds, truth screams, and fiction feels too real. Every story here, it'll leave a scar, and you'll keep coming back for more. Tap subscribe. Share with someone who needs to see behind the smile. Love and Blood, because some hearts don't just break, they burn.